Do you know that behind every tobacco product there are human rights violations and child labor? And did you also know that the tobacco industry manipulates politicians to influence laws and regulations?
In this movie, you will learn things that you might not have heard so much about before. This knowledge is not very common to have. We have based the content on evidence, on stories, and on our own experiences. My name is Antonia.
And my name is Louise, and we work at the non-governmental organization A Non-Smoking Generation in Sweden. The video that you will see now was recorded in Bangladesh in 2020. It portrays the lives of many children working in tobacco-producing countries.
আমাদের চাপ পড়ে এখন আমরা স্কুলে আসিনি বাবা মাকে দুজনেই আমরা সাহায্য করি এক থেকে দেড় মাস বা 2 মাস
এই তামাকের মৌসুমে অনেক বাচ্চারা স্কুলে আসে না কারণ তামাকের কাজে এতই পরিশ্রম যে বাবারা একাই পারে ওঠে না তাই শিশুরা বাধ্য হয় বাবা মাকে সাহায্য করে এতে অনেক বাচ্চারাই পড়াশোনার ক্ষতি হয়
আমাদের তো 100 উপস্থিত থাকার কথা সেখানে আমরা 50% উপস্থিতি পাই যেদিন এই 2 মাস উপস্থিতি খুবই কম বাচ্চাদের তো প্রচুর ক্ষতি হচ্ছে বাচ্চারা ওদের অসুখ বিসুখ হচ্ছে রোগবালাই হচ্ছে এবং বেশি আমার ক্ষতি হচ্ছে শিক্ষাতে ক্ষতি হচ্ছে বেশি শিক্ষা তারা উপস্থিত যদি না হয় একটা শিক্ষক ছাত্র যদি উপস্থিতি না হয় আমার আজ ধরে একটা পাঠ ছিল সেই পাঠটা তো থেকে বঞ্চিত হয়ে গেল
Countless reports witness harsh working conditions and child labor at tobacco plantations around the world. Poor working conditions are not unique for the tobacco industry, but the difference between tobacco products and other commercial products is that the consumers risk dying. The companies let farmers and children continue to work under hazardous conditions despite their enormous resources and power to make a change. So, if the conditions are that bad, why does someone start growing tobacco?
Many farmers start to grow tobacco with the hope of a better income to be able to support their family and improve their living conditions. The tobacco companies offer the farmers a contract that entails a loan to buy everything that's needed to start growing tobacco: seeds, equipment, pesticides, and fertilizers. In the contracts, in most cases, the buyer, the tobacco company, decides the quantity and the quality of the tobacco. And if the tobacco doesn't meet the demands when it's time to sell, the companies can push down the prices and buy it for a significantly lower amount than what was contracted. And where does this leave the farmers?
The unfair contracts and the low income leads to severe consequences. Since the farmers often get lower income than expected, they get into debt and cannot afford to hire people to help with extensive workload. So they need to get help from somewhere else, from their families and their children. This situation leads to farmers ending up in a cycle of poverty.
Tobacco farming requires toxic pesticides and fertilizers, leading to severe health consequences, especially as they rarely have any safety equipment. Additionally, farming tobacco requires physically hard and challenging work. Both irrigation and picking the leaves are conducted by hand, and sharp tools are often necessary. And a working day entails many hours under the burning sun. And the reality can look like this: a young girl using her bare hands.
It is not only the fertilizers and the pesticides that are harmful, but also the plant itself. The plant contains nicotine, and nicotine is a poison. When the farmers get in contact with the leaves, the nicotine absorbs through the skin and reaches the blood flow. During a 12-hour working day, the farmers and the children can absorb as much nicotine as if they would have smoked 50 cigarettes. This leads to something that is called the green tobacco sickness. So, what does this sickness mean?
Green tobacco sickness is nicotine poisoning that makes you feel nausea, you get lightheaded, headache, shortness of breath. You feel irritated skin, mouth, and eyes. And it's similar to get the flu. And you get all of these symptoms every day. And both children and adults are affected. Children working at tobacco plantations are also at risk of not getting a complete education, which increases their risk of continuing living in poverty and having less chance to take on other possibilities to support themselves.
Child labor at tobacco plantations is classified as hazardous work for children, which is forbidden under the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child. The convention clearly states the right of the child to be protected from economic exploitation and from performing any work that is likely to be hazardous or to interfere with the child's education or to be harmful to the child's health. Other articles also concerns children's rights, both in the production and the consumption, such as the right to education, the right to the highest standard of health, and the right to play and rest.
In January 2018, we went to Malawi, one of the countries most dependent on tobacco exports. Our aim was to learn more about the situation there. So we met farmers, non-governmental organizations, and local officers who told us about the challenges that both farmers and the government have. Tobacco production has existed in the country for more than 100 years, but Malawi is still a low-income country.
The report from our investigation highlighted the farmers' difficult position with the tobacco companies. The farmers focus on selling their tobacco and getting the highest price possible at the auction. A good price is necessary to be able to invest in, for example, education or school clothes. Louise, do you remember that a person from a non-profit organization said that we need to move away from the shackles that tobacco companies have on us?
And now let us talk more about the environmental consequences. The global footprint of the tobacco industry is equivalent to the total footprint of Sweden, times 2. The industry causes an extensive negative impact on the environment in the whole supply chain. The tobacco farmers, the animals, and the environment are getting poisoned by the nicotine in the plant, the pesticides, and the fertilizers. Today, 90% of tobacco production is existing in low and middle income countries. It burdens the most vulnerable countries by destroying their ecosystems and exploiting their natural resources.
Since the tobacco plant drains the soil of nutrients, new forest lands need to be constantly emptied for tobacco growing. Also, the drying of tobacco leaves is a direct cause of deforestation, since the burning of wood is one of the most common ways to dry the leaves. In tobacco farming areas in Africa, deforestation is 10 times higher than average in Africa. Globally, the tobacco industry cut down 200,000 hectares every year, which is 1.7% of the global deforestation.
And what about the littering? The tobacco leaves are transported around the world to reach their final destination, on our streets and in our oceans. Cigarette butts are the most littered item and the most abundant form of plastic waste in the world. Globally, 4,500 billion cigarette butts are thrown into nature every year.
And they are also the greatest source of trash on our beaches and in our oceans.
80% of the litter on our streets in Sweden are from tobacco-related products.
4 million pinches of snus are thrown in the toilet every day in Sweden.
Almost all cigarette filters are made of the plastic material cellulose acetate. It takes years for nature to degrade it, and meanwhile it is harming the environment. Consequently, the industry is unsustainable from planting the seed until the product ends up on our streets.
Did you know that every year tobacco use kills 8 million people? So how can these products still be legal? And why does youth and children still start smoking and use other tobacco products? The most obvious answer to this is that there is a big, powerful and tactical tobacco industry. They work to strategically secure future customers.
Both on the national and international level, the tobacco industry work frequently to stop, delay, and diminish measures that are proposed to decrease consumption. They also often try to establish themselves as a public health partner.
182 countries have ratified the World Health Organization's framework on tobacco control. All countries have to support measures to implement all the articles in the convention. Article 5.3 states, "Parties shall act to protect these policies from commercial and other vested interests of the tobacco industry in accordance with national law."
This article is not considered in many countries, not in Sweden or in many other high-income countries that are seen to have progressive regulation on tobacco. We are actually lagging behind in many ways. For example, from our latest survey from 2020 shows that 1 out of 5 youth say that they often see tobacco advertisement, even though it is forbidden.
The tobacco industry's innovations are an urgent problem to global and public health, since they can bypass current laws and, for example, get away with marketing to children and youths. Some of the most common strategies are
appealing, trendy, and youthful packaging to make it look like an accessory.
Fruity and candy-like flavors to make them taste better and also seem less harmful.
Marketing in social media with campaigns directed to youths, often with celebrities and influencers with a lot of young followers.
Product development, such as, for example, nicotine pouches or e-cigarettes. They are marketed as tobacco-free, even if they contain huge amount of nicotine, which is extracted from tobacco leaves. This strategy also makes the product seem less harmful.
These types of new nicotine and tobacco products are becoming more popular across the globe, facilitating and legitimizing the expansion of the tobacco industry. The products are often marketed as safer and more sustainable alternatives to traditional cigarettes, misleading media, politicians, the public, and international institutions. So, what is really the truth behind the launching of these new products?
The tobacco industry is under threat. Smoking is declining in many countries and will continue to do so as a result of improvements in tobacco control and health awareness. Their method to recruit new customers is the launching of new products. Due to the rapid increase in popularity, many multinational companies are now expanding their markets worldwide.
Even though the companies market the products as a way to quit cigarettes, there are no evidence or research that is not associated with the tobacco industry that support that claim. On the contrary, recent studies reveal that youth who try nicotine products more often start smoking traditional cigarettes than youth who never tried nicotine products.
What is really the harm with nicotine? By focusing on the risks of cigarettes, the companies also try to downsize the health effects of nicotine, which tend to be undermined and disregarded. But there is a substantial number of studies proving that nicotine is far more than addictive.
Nicotine is actually a toxic substance that permanently damages the brain, impairs cognitive functions, and increases risk of mental illness, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, lung disease, birth defects, and other addictions. Children are especially susceptible to cognitive damage, and they risk long-term health complications.
The truth is, tobacco counteracts all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it concerns both the production and the consumption. Each year, 8 million lives are lost due to tobacco use, and 65,000 children die because of secondhand smoke.
Tobacco leads to great economic losses and burden on healthcare. Globally, smoking costs $2 billion, which is around 2% of the world's GDP.
Apart from this, the huge waste of public resources also equals lost opportunities to be able to invest in sustainable alternatives in the society.
It also increases poverty and inequality, both between states and people.
And as demonstrated earlier, it has a massive impact on the environment.
So how can we accept this? Well, the good news is we don't have to. Here are 5 call to actions. Implement the Tobacco Convention. Addressing member states and UN organizations. The convention clearly states that each party shall implement effective measures to reduce tobacco consumption and nicotine addiction in any form.
Invest responsibly to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, addressing banks, investment and pension funds and other investors. Responsible investors should exclude tobacco from their portfolios and commit to the Tobacco-Free Finance Pledge. It is especially important that international organizations invest in line with the SDGs. Tobacco and sustainability will never be compatible.
No cooperation with any tobacco company. Addressing NGOs, ad agencies, companies, public figures and influencers. Every stakeholder should end all cooperation with and funding from tobacco companies. Ad agencies should exclude tobacco companies from their collaboration and take the Quit Big Tobacco pledge.
Tobacco-free school hours. Addressing politicians and schools. Politicians should, in their obligation to protect children's rights to good health, establish a law regulating tobacco-free school hours, which means that during the time in school, neither students nor staff can use any tobacco product.
Spread knowledge about the truth behind the tobacco industry, addressing media, politicians and the public. Our surveys reveal that the general knowledge about the negative aspects of the tobacco industry is extremely low, and the lack of media attention is part of the explanation. The degree of sustainability and environmental impacts of other industries are well known and acknowledged. So how can one of the most unsustainable industries in the world escape critical examination?
After receiving this knowledge through lectures in Swedish schools, 97% of all students said that they now have arguments to stay tobacco-free.
It is evident that tobacco does not only harm individuals, it harms the whole planet, and we can all participate in ending this.
So, let us stop this epidemic together. It is time for the global community to prioritize young people's health and everyone's right to a sustainable future.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to get in contact with us, here is our social media accounts. Bye! Bye.